All right, I'll call to order this evening's meeting, and why don't we begin with the Pledge of Allegiance? Randall, if you could unmute all the members for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag
flag
of the United States of
States of
America
America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to my chair report for this evening. You will see we are going to try, it's that time of year to start taking a look at policy again. So we will be holding a policy workshop, hopefully next week, just to go over some of those that we had to table in the fall and winter. Also, the superintendent is in her report this evening is going to be talking about a presentation that her and Ms. Church did on community engagement and communicating with the community during the COVID-19 crisis. They actually presented to a nationwide panel a few weeks ago on this to help other districts actually come up with new strategies on how to increase engagement. Other than that, I don't have anything this evening. I just thank everyone again for hanging in there. Erica? And at this time, Randall, please just make sure everyone is muted.
Thank you. So tonight, Julie Church is joining us, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for Julie to share with you what we presented at the Friday Cafe a couple of weeks ago to a group of people who signed on to this Zoom webinar from across the nation. And Julie also helped to facilitate one of the breakout sessions later in that meeting. It was about family and community engagement, partnering with our families, supporting our families, being responsive to their needs, and also highlight some of the survey data that we collected and analyzed as part of our distance learning. So I'll turn it over to Julie, who may want to pull up and share her screen, Randall, so she can get the presentation in front of the board. Thanks, Julie, for being here, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share this. It really was an honor to present for Friday Cafe. There were 265 members present, and as a result, on Tuesday I have a meeting with someone from Des Moines, Iowa. So it really was across the country. Let's see if I could share my screen. No, Randall, I'm disabled to share. Sorry for the delay. Try once more. Well, if that doesn't come up, I could tell you about it, but it's no luck.
Randall, would it be easier for me to share my screen? Yeah? Okay. So just give me a second and I can pull up the presentation, Julie. Just 1 second.
No problem.
Okay, Randall, you'll just have to enable me to share my screen.
I'm sorry, that doesn't appear to be an option.
Does Ellen have it as the host since you're the co-host?
Oh, yes. Ellen, are you able to make either Erica or Julie the co-host? In the upper right-hand corner.
Try it now, Erica.
Got it. Perfect. Sorry about that. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Julie, you just say when, and I will change the slide. Did we lose Julie?
Nope, I'm here. I was muted. I'm sorry.
That's
So
okay.
you could just go right to slide 2. I'm sorry. Back 1 though. I think we jumped 2. All right, perfect. All right, so in district, we had sent out 3 surveys over the past 10 weeks. The first one, like all districts, we found information about the technology needs, devices, internet capability from families, and that was pretty common across the state. Every district had done that. We learned from each other on accessibility to hotspots and requirements. So that was pretty standard. The partnership that East Haven is a cohort within 5 other districts, and that partnership is working with Johns Hopkins University, National Network Partnership Schools, and CREC on some surveys. So this next survey was a result of that. We're also finalizing right now a survey that's going to be used statewide at the end of all this to really listen to families, listen to students, and listen to teachers. So we can go to the next slide. So we wanted to know what families are feeling. We had to look at how we were gathering our information, making sure we were inclusive to all families, really listening to populations, our EL population, our students with special needs, and making sure that everyone had equal voice. And then what we do with that information was what was most impressive to the cohort that we're in. And so that's how we were asked to present this to Friday Cafe. You can go to the next slide. So we had that formal technology survey, which I shared, the family distance learning survey, which went out. There was some questions about it, making sure it was received by everyone. And I'll speak to that just for a minute so that we understand that. There was a teacher and school support staff survey. So to provide the opportunity for teachers to give us some feedback, what else do they need, so that those can be addressed with building administration and pupil services, pushing out some things they may need questions answered for. But we didn't only collect information through the surveys, we also utilize social media. So I'm a member of the Facebook group Parent Voices. I try to stay current with the posts that are out there and really listen to topics that are concerning to families and use those topics as kind of like the background that's feeding the questions that we put into our surveys. So we really want to make sure that if we're hearing things that things aren't being communicated effectively, that we find a way to address them. And we can really evaluate our work that way. So if you go to the next slide. This is actually a slide that Ms. Murray shared with you in the past about the responses that came out on the distance learning survey and how many students received Chromebooks after our initial distribution day. The survey responses for that, we had 977, and they were in English and in Spanish. That really is a highlight, the fact that we're sending out our communications in English and Spanish. I can tell you today I was on a meeting with CPAC, and CPAC had a representative from the State Department of Ed, and one of the parents actually asked them, recommended to the State Department of Ed that they start to provide their communications in multiple languages. So it's things that we're hearing and how we're addressing them. Families wanted things in Spanish, to make sure that that's the second largest population. Individuals speak Spanish in East Haven, and so once we hit like another threshold, we'll make sure they're also included. Next slide. That's kind of just what I spoke to, so we can go. Thanks. So there was some question about families receiving the survey. So the survey was pushed through the same notification that we send out all messages, which is School Messenger. And it did have my name attached to the bottom in case there were any questions. Some feedback that came, a phone call I received was make sure it always says East Haven Public School in the memo. So I said every communication moving forward, we'll put East Haven Public School District and then the message so that parents don't disregard it thinking it's lots of, spam and things that flood our inboxes these days. The survey was sent out on 4/21, and by 4/22, we had 467 responses. So people were eager to provide information and we were ready to listen. The date that we presented this, which was 5/1, I believe, by then we had 498 responses in English and 15 in Spanish. And at that point, 85 or just about 85% of our families reported that they felt supported or very supported during distance learning. So that was a positive. Next slide. Actually, before I tell you, don't have to go back, but before I tell you about some of the things that families wanted to know about, this was resent in the last communication that was sent out by the superintendent. And after resending it, we received an additional 68 responses. So that's where we found the new information where it was lowered slightly to 81.4% of families feeling supported. 4 areas that surfaced for families that they wanted additional information on: resources to support some social and emotional well-being. That is a hot topic across the state. What do we have to offer for families during this time? Guidance from teachers and school administration on prioritizing tasks and assignments, ideas for staying fit and healthy, and building structures and routines. We can go to the next slide. Mrs. Murray has on her teaching and learning page on the district website some screencastifies, that's what they're called, where she has provided some information on helping families build structures and routines for their day, setting up a workspace. On social media, we've had people share ways that they set up theirs, just having families talk to families about what's working. That is essentially what a school family partnership is about, and family and community engagement work that I do is trying to get families to talk with families and families to talk with school in two-way dialogue, in two-way conversations. The next one. And this, I know that Mrs. Murphy shared, but we also shared it out. We have a distance learning hub, and there are chat sessions available. We took this need for families to talk to families to another level since this presentation, and we now are hosting what we're calling circles.
Community circle.
Community, thank you. I'm like, oh, there's another C there. Community circles, and our first one will be held tomorrow night. Again, we sent out an additional form requesting information from parents who wanted to join a platform with perhaps where we will have panelists, including a teacher, an administrator, myself, a facilitator from ACES, and the assistant superintendent. And we're going to provide that platform for parents to discuss the questions that they have to break out into chat rooms where they can share information with each other. The format of that is modeled after what I experienced through Friday Cafe. It was a very effective model for people to communicate. So I am looking forward to it, and that's tomorrow. We can go to the next slide. To address some of the things we can do, all of us, to address the mental and emotional health of our students, we're pushing things through social media, in addition to what teachers are putting into their everyday lessons and what parents are putting in, what principals are putting into their morning routines when they greet students and they say the pledge together and they have positive words and thoughts. So we're posting things in Facebook, you know, even if I can't do this, what are the things you still can do? On Twitter, Mamagwin School shared days of positivity. There's the Talk It Out line available. So we're posting all of those notifications to do the best we can to communicate things that are available for families to help support their students during this time, especially when it's so challenging, but honestly throughout the rest of the year as well. Some schools went on to do Wellness Wednesdays. Support staff have collaborated in developing web pages and lunch groups and meeting times that anyone can drop in at any point in time during the day. And I know the restorative specialist at the middle school is doing that. I know the counselor at East Haven Academy is doing that. And I spoke to a high school counselor as well. They all have open lunch groups, for lack of a better term, where students can drop in at any time and just find someone to talk to. Next slide. So keeping fit and healthy was a topic that parents were looking for more information on. And from the high school, down to pre-K, this was communicated that parents were looking for more things. The high school initiated a Workout Wednesday campaign that was pushed through social media, also through the platforms that the teachers were posting on. Their families were encouraged to exercise together. The picture up on the right, that's kind of under our pictures, but that was great. It was the whole family exercising together and then uploading videos. And I thought this little guy in the middle was just a spectacular example of how creative phys ed teachers are. This picture was sent to me, and he made a paddle with a paper plate, wooden spoon, and he is bouncing up a rolled up sock and trying to get it in the laundry basket. So they're very creative ways to keep kids fit and healthy right now. And I absolutely loved it. Next slide. Excuse me, I'm sorry. The staff survey provided us some information of what staff needs. One of the question was, if families ask you, do you know where to direct them for resources if they're a family in need? And not enough of our staff members said yes. So that required us to recirculate those resources. Every day I get things in my inbox for food, accessibility and resources and where we can find them. So I post them on the district website. I make sure they're distributed. We're going to continue that throughout the summer and put them in the grab and go lunch form. So like a little half-page sheet with updated resources for various things that families may need so that they always know where to get them. We needed to do a little organized outreach for families in need. I've been contacted by social workers and EL coordinators and EL teachers, classroom teachers when something is brought to their attention or there's a family in need. So we need to implement and organize our outreach to those families and make sure they're receiving all the support. That was raised from the staff survey. And then they really just wanted to recognize some successes along the way, because many things have been successful. Nothing's perfect. We're definitely learning as we go, as every other district in the state is, but there are some wonderful things that we wanted to share, and the teachers that responded to that also wanted to share. They wanted to share some good things they see their colleagues doing and highlight some of the things that they were doing. Next slide. So again, my work and the grant that is funded by the federal government is part of CT Family. So it's Connecticut Family Engagement Network, and it's 5 districts. I know I shared that presentation with you early on in the school year, but we follow the guiding principles of the State Department of Ed's full, equal, and equitable partnerships with families. And when I looked at that and preparing this presentation for the group that we had put it together for, the first 5 things in the guiding principles from the State Department of Ed are building collaborative, trusting relationships focused on learning. And I really feel that we're doing a very good job. Yes, there are things we can improve upon, but we are doing a very good job building relationships with families and partnerships that to support them during distance learning. We're listening to what families are saying about their children's interests and challenges. And again, these words were exactly from there, so I was kind of pleased with what we're implementing. We're modeling high quality practices. The practices were so people were so interested, they asked us to share them with other districts. We're sharing information frequently with families about how their children are doing, and we're trying to respond to the social and emotional needs of our students. So that was the presentation that we had put on for, again, that's called Friday Cafe. It's led by Judy Carson from the State Department of Ed. Right now it's being held every 2 weeks during this time because the need is so great, but it's held year-round monthly. And all families will be invited to that. So I will take any questions if you have any. I don't see anyone.
Tia, did you have a question?
Yes, it's basically, it's a comment too. I think you're doing a great job, and to be invited to the state is awesome. But my real question is, how will there be more surveys? I mean, I know we're heading into the end here, but maybe.
So right now, no. So I every Thursday have a meeting with someone from Johns Hopkins University, someone from CREC, the State Department of Ed. We are making a comprehensive a survey that's going to be used by the 5 districts, and we're also going to recommend tomorrow, Friday, at this Friday's Cafe, that other districts use it as well. So there is a consultant firm out of New Haven that is doing the evaluation for the project work, and cross-sector consulting. He will get the results of the surveys from each district across the state. He will provide each district with their own results, and then he will provide the State Department of Ed with the state results.
Okay.
To help us, yes. So there is another survey that is coming, and it will be right towards the end of the year, kind of to give a full evaluation of distance learning. But I felt we needed to put something out and get feedback now, so things we can act upon and make changes.
I think that's important too. That's
right.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions or comments, Lisa? Wait, yep.
Jewel, thank you, and thank you for following up on my questions, my requests. I also want to thank you for the meeting last week. The FACE meeting was wonderful. I thought the parent engagement, the involvement with yourself and the other individuals, I thought it was wonderful, just to get the interaction and get everyone's just their thoughts on how things were going. It's just, I thought it was wonderful. So thank you. And hopefully I'll be invited again. It was wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll put that out there. When I do have monthly family and community engagement team meetings with the
great.
schools. So any board member who would like to sit in and actually see it in action, it's pretty impressive. Parents really being open with teachers. We have community partners, and it's just really nice dialogue and ways to move our district forward. So it's just an organized event of things we really want to happen all the time anyway, right?
And I also thought to actually hear that one parent really be so just outspoken was wonderful, because parents sometimes don't want to speak when it comes down to it, and she was great. I mean, she always usually has a good voice anyway, but you guys are going back and forth. It was nice just to get the feedback. It was nice. Very,
Thank
very
you.
good. You're
Thank
welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Jack, I believe Jack, comment or question?
Yeah, hi. Again, I'd also like to comment, Julie and her committee and all of the people that have been doing this hard work. We spoke earlier in the year about how many different languages are spoken or are based languages. And I know the surveys are sent out in Spanish and in English. And I know you can't send it out in every single language, but are there modifications being made so that those individuals who are not English or Spanish speaking people being part of this surveys?
They're sent out in a Google form, and I believe Google form has the ability to translate. So the Spanish survey that goes out, I need to read the responses. So I hit translate and it brings it back to English for me. I will look though, Mr. Stacy, and find out some more information to see how many languages we have the ability to translate to.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great question, Jack. Is there anyone else that have any comments or questions regarding the presentation? If not, I'm going to move on to the assistant superintendent and her report.
Thank you. I had prepared a report for you, but I will make it very brief. I want to talk today a little bit about Memorial Day celebrations, summer school, and some new distance learning platform opportunities. So first, I'd like to thank the 26 families that registered for a multi-age district-wide live teaching event. Julie, who you heard from, and Joe Marangel were there. We played a trivia game and had a vocabulary-rich discussion to learn about how we commemorate our fallen heroes during this special weekend. And again, just to reiterate what Julie said, we do have a series of community circle events. The first is tomorrow, and our next 3 series will offer supports on things like helping your child cope with their feelings, motivating adolescent learners, in what we're calling parenting hacks. And so on to summer school. In light of all of the learning gaps, we're excited to offer 2 4-week sessions of summer school. We will run a program Monday through Thursday from 8:30 to 12:30. But the program will be virtual, although teachers will be going live daily to support student learning. We're using blended learning curriculum resources, and I wanted to offer you an opportunity to learn a little bit about one of those programs which we're using in grades 6 through 12. That is to support both enrichment and remediation, which is the Edgenuity platform. So our team looked at a couple of different platforms, which included Apex and Virtual High School. This particular platform stood out for us with the extensive support for English learners embedded within the program. It will support offerings for summer school and additional flexibility for the next full year, with remediation and support for classes like Prep for Reading Grade 7 or Algebra Readiness we can offer to our students, as well as courses like chemistry that we can support students, or learning loss courses, which have been specifically designed to mitigate the impact of what researchers are calling the COVID slide. So this will afford us the opportunity to use some 6-week intervention cycles to engage. The course list of all the different options available to students will be going out in a memo that I will be sending this week. And K-5 students will be using our blended learning platforms that are a part of our new education, new curricular resources that were adopted last year. So those are just some brief updates. I didn't want to take too much of your time, but if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Jen. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Marianne, Mrs.
Yes.
Pellegrino?
How are we doing the rest of the semester in the lab sciences? For instance, the chem lab and the biology lab, how are they meeting their requirements to get their credits for this this year?
So some of the, I will have to, I'll just say this, I'll reach out to Maria Pompana, who can provide a more specific guidance and details, but I do understand that some of our, obviously everyone in the state is in this unique situation, and we have been, many vendor and corporations have made available like virtual lab resources that are being used. And again, I'll find out more specifically. I think we can all understand none of the situation that we're in is ideal, but our staff is making extensive efforts to ensure that we're getting as close as possible to what we can afford our kids the opportunities. But I can't speak specifically to each, chem lab, and I will reach out to our science instructional leader and get more information for you.
Marianne, I do know, I was in a couple of weekly updates with science teachers and Maria, and they are looking for videos that depict certain components or parts of their labs for students to watch. Well, it's not the same as them conducting the experiment themselves. At least they can witness sort of the process or the reaction or whatever it is that's transpiring during the hands-on component.
I actually watched Charlotte have to do an experiment just last week with jars and video herself and then upload it to the course. So I believe she didn't have certain materials, but what they were doing, she was actually able to do with what was in the yard. So it was interesting to be able to see that.
Getting creative.
Yeah. Luckily, I keep a lot of canning jars that she was able to use. So actually at this time, you know what, I'm going to ask, are there any chair reports? Any subcommittee reports? Any of the subcommittee chairs? At this time, no? Mrs. De Palma?
So we're going to discuss a personnel matter tonight, but we haven't met for a personnel subcommittee per se. We're still waiting, I think, negotiations and things to happen, but we do have some contracts to look at. That's all.
Okay. Anyone else? No. Okay. So then at that time, I'm going to ask that we move on to approval of meeting minutes for regular board meeting May 12th, 2020, as well as our special board meeting May 20th, 2020. Is there a motion? Mrs. De Palma?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes for I just had it written here too. You said 4/20 and May 12th and May 20th, 2020.
Yes. Do I have a second? Marianne, Mrs. Pellegrino?
I will second it.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the meeting minutes at this time? No? Well, then I'll ask Ellen if you could do a roll call vote for approval of the meeting minutes.
Tia De Palma,
Yes.
Liz Esposito,
Yes.
Lisa Dranisi Anastasio,
Yes.
Tom Hennessy,
Abstain.
Miriam Pellegrino,
Yes, I can't unmute. There I am. Okay.
Erica Santiago,
Yes.
Jack Stacy,
Yes.
Michelle DeLucia.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Carries. I do ask, I would like to remind everyone to make sure they mute themselves after they give their vote, because there's a lot of background noise going on, I think, with everybody unmuted at once. So that would be really helpful. Okay, so that we are going to move on to approval of the consent agenda. We have approval of invoices for fiscal year 2019-2020 in the amount of $1,046,063.19. And we also have approval of purchase orders over $7,000 as discussed in subcommittee. Do I have a motion? Mr. Hennessy?
I'm gonna vote no, so this needs to come off the consent agenda.
Okay. Okay, what are we taking off?
Both,
Both?
yeah.
Okay, so we will add those. I'll ask for you to add a motion later in the meeting.
No, I mean, you could vote on it. You could have a roll call vote.
Okay,
I want the ability to vote no, that's all.
okay. All right, so does anyone else have any questions or concerns or comments on the consent agenda? Mr. Stacy?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, the invoices and the POs of over $7,000.
Okay, great. Do I have a second? Erica, Mrs. Santiago? Mrs.
Second.
Santiago?
Yep, second.
Okay, great. So Ellen, I ask at this time for you to do a roll call vote for to approve the consent agenda.
Tia DePalma,
Tia, restate. You answered before you were unmuted.
Oh, yes.
Liz Esposito,
Yes.
Lisa Geraci Anastasio,
Abstaining.
Tom Hennessy,
No,
Marianne Pellegrino,
Yes.
Erica Santiago,
Yes.
Jack Stacy,
Yes.
Michelle DeLucia.
Yes.
Motion carries.
So that brings us to audience of citizens for this evening. We have not had any correspondence submitted as of yet. Ellen, was there anything that may have been submitted after the 5 p.m. cutoff?
I can check really quick.
So you just, if it would be possible to make sure that you forward anything that was submitted after that mark to the board members when you get a chance.
Okay.
If we did receive any. Okay. So that would move us on to new business. And we have 6.1, which is discussion and possible action on personal contracts. And I believe tonight the personal contracts that we have on for this evening is for a physical therapist as well as the National School Lunch and Transportation Facilitator. Does anyone have any clarification questions before I ask for a motion? Nope, then Mrs. De Palma?
All right, so my question, if this belongs after we make the motion, just let me know. My question is, I know we talked about this, but I do want to make a point that the salary jumped a lot, and I was going to ask Mrs. Forty about that. I don't know where that question belongs. I can't hear you, Michelle. You're muted. Michelle is muted.
Yeah, I got it. I think that probably should be something after a motion is made. But if anyone needs any explanation of the positions themselves, if they have not had a chance to view the descriptions in the packet. No, good. Okay, then at this time I ask for a motion. Mrs. De Palma?
To take action on the personal contracts in the packet tonight, which I don't have written. What is therapists? Is it PT?
Physical therapist and
Physical therapist. I'm sorry.
And the National School Lunch Transportation Facilitator.
Yes, and those are two personal contracts. Yes, I make that motion.
Do I have a second? Mrs. Esposito?
Yes, I second that motion.
Okay, great. All right, so we have a motion before us to approve two personal contracts for this evening, a physical therapist as well as a National School Lunch and Transportation Facilitator. At this time, do any members have any questions, concerns, or comments? Mrs. De Palma?
So do you need me to repeat the question, Mrs. Forty?
No, I got it. Thank you. So in the past, the physical therapist has only worked 28 hours per week. This new contract is at the commensurate salary at 35 hours per week due to increased caseloads of physical therapy and the desire to reduce a need for outsourcing.
Okay, that explains it. So that's all I needed. Thank you very much.
I have a quick question. How are we utilizing the physical therapist in the virtual setting?
I'm going to defer to Mr. Swan, and he can provide you some specifics.
Great.
He might, there you go. He might just, yeah.
Thank you. It's really fun. I've actually attended some of those sessions. She goes online and does those sessions virtually with little people age 3 to big people age 21 across our district, and through actual video conferencing with the parent and working with the kid, and everybody's spaced out. So what they do is they work in a situation in which she can direct them to participate with some safety limitations, obviously, in physical therapy activities on site in their home while she's in her home. So for example, practice walking up and down the stairs with alternating steps. Practice walking down the stairs with alternating steps. Different things that physical therapists need to do for strengthening exercises, stretching exercises, and providing opportunities for them to access educational opportunity and overcome their physical impairments.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other members have any questions or comments at this time?
It was an excellent question. Thank you.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions on the National School Lunch and Transportation Facilitator? Okay, great. If there's no further questions or comments, and I'm going to ask Ellen to go ahead and do a roll call vote to approve the personal contracts.
Pia DePalma,
Yes, yes. Pia DePalma, yes.
Liz Esposito,
Yes.
Lisa Geraci Anastasio,
Yes.
Tom Hennessy,
No.
Mary Ann Pellegrino,
Yes.
Erica Santiago,
Yes.
Jack Stacy,
Yes.
Michelle DeLucia.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, so that brings us to our discussion and possible action on our list of hires and rehires for this evening.
So there's no hires. It's just informational in terms of resignations. There are 4 of them, and there's no retirements.
Okay. All right. At this time, did anyone have any questions, concerns, or comments on the list? Okay, then. Ellen, I ask that you take it to a vote for the list of hires and rehires. Do we need to vote on?
No, there's nobody.
There's no hires or
There's no
rehires,
one for resignations.
Okay.
just 4 resignations.
So there's no one we're hiring. So we really don't need to take any action.
Nope.
Okay. All right. So then we'll go ahead and move on to the discussion and possible action on the new position for the academic interventionists. And remember, as discussed in subcommittee, those are 5 new positions, so we can ensure equity throughout the district. At this time, I'm going to ask if any members have any questions or comments. Mrs. DePalma?
I'm sorry.
Was your hand up?
It was, but I thought I was going to make the motion. I apologize.
Okay. Like I said, any clarification questions before the motion is made? Okay. Well, then I'm going to ask for a motion, and then we'll open up for discussion. Mrs. Geraci?
No, you just answered. You said open up for discussion. I just want to know what you meant by clarification, but if you're going to wait for discussion, thank you.
Okay. Can I have a motion? Ms. DePalma?
I make a motion to accept and take the new position, accept action on the new 5 interventionists, academic interventionists.
Okay. Do I have a second? Mrs. Santiago?
Second.
Second. Okay, so the motion before you is to approve the 5 new academic interventionist positions. So at this time, I will ask if any board members have any questions or comments. Mrs. Dracy.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just want to reiterate what I said in subcommittee. I think that I don't want anyone to think that I don't think the position is one of an amazing position. I've looked over, obviously, the job description. I think it's a wonderful position. My issue is hiring 5. I think that's excessive. I think that we are at a fragile state, not only as a town, as a community, and we're having financial struggles. I think that 5 is just a lot. Piggybacking on Mr. Hennessy's statements about it, us not morphing into other areas. I just think we need to be solid. I think that, again, also I want to have on record as well that I have been someone who I'm sorry, there's bugs. I apologize, guys. I have been someone who advocated for sincere mental health support throughout the years, and I've gotten nowhere. I think that you want to hire 5. There's plenty of opportunities to have social workers and psychologists throughout the district, and you gave 1 and shared it. I have an issue. I think it's a great position, but I think 5's excessive. So I think we should start off small, and I would just like to have that on record. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hopefully we maybe be able to find some other funding for those other positions that we did want to. And I agree, it's very important to meet the mental and social needs of the students as well. Very important, actually.
And
Any
just
other questions or comments?
Just as an aside, we do have a psychologist in every single one of our schools. And currently we have the budget that you just saw would account for 1 social worker at a minimum at every school moving forward. So, in addition to the school-based health centers, behavioral health programs. So we just want to clarify that point. So, the budget cuts given to you maintained a social worker so that every school could have a social worker.
That's because those were existing positions, correct?
We did have an additional 0.5 that we needed to increase.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right, Mr. Palma?
So I want to remind us that, we've heard many comments about being a district that we are growing our children, and people talk about test scores. I don't think we should do it just for test scores. Every building has been making some, great strides, but we also had very large classrooms. And I want to remind everybody numbers in classrooms in some places. But I also want to remind us all that our schools are, distance learning is great. And I think East Haven's one of the best, doing fantastically. And I walk and I see the kids and I see teachers out there a lot. And people are saying how much, it is working. But there's some downfalls too. And if we remember that we've got to get them when we can, we've got to get back to business when we can get back in school and keep interventionists going strong and be equal in all 5 schools. So I think it's so important to make sure that we hit all the schools and not just a few schools. We need to get ahead of the game. We're already, I don't want to say behind, but we're obviously having to deal with this crisis right now. So I think it would only put us in a place that would enhance student growth. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. I agree. I think come fall, we're going to have a greater need than we ever would have expected when we created these positions. Is there anyone else who has a comment or question? Ms. Pellegrino?
I'm just wondering if if there's a possibility of amending the motion to say the 3 neediest schools.
I don't know how we would be able to determine that.
Well, maybe by scores.
I don't think the scores necessarily reflect the need for an interventionist.
Right. Just a suggestion.
I understand. Erica, did you have any information to share on that?
So, the idea for 5 was to ensure that every single school had an interventionist to provide interventions to students in grades kindergarten through 5th grade. in an equitable manner so that they all had the same opportunity to close those academic gaps. It would be challenging to, only provide the interventionist to 3 schools and not 2 others, or, 1 school and not the other 4. And I understand the rationale there to see